Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your interest in coming here to hear about this program of ours, the Health and Happiness Program. My name is Sylvanus Jack Diel. A lot of people call me Jack. So thanks for being here, and I'm here to answer your questions about nutrition, and so let's fire away.
Mr. Diel, my name's Jennifer Foley, and my first question for you today is why should we be interested in nutrition and health? Aren't there government controls and doctors that are looking out for us?
We sure do. The difference is in the government controls, there's just so many of them. The first one I'd like to tell you about is the Nutritional Foundation story. And this Nutritional Foundation is a part of our government, and it's made up of about 22 people on the board of directors. Well, those 22 people help to determine the health of our entire country, and they determine it through money grants to colleges. And of course the colleges then publish whatever that they do, and they publish it so that it comes out like they want it to. Or would you say this yourself? You see, the people on that board of directors are the heads of our major corporations that are in what I call junk food, or anything that's bad for us. There is somebody on that board. So obviously if it's a sugar company or a white flour company or a tobacco company or whatever kind of a company that there might be, they're going to make sure it comes out like they want it to. You see what I'm trying to say about a control? Well, almost the same way, doctors and the AMA. Well, the AMA is an organization that many of the doctors belong to. I'm not sure whether it's much more than half, but many of them belong to the AMA. Well, between the AMA and the doctors, they sort of control a lot what our government does. So they're having a lot to say about that. And obviously, they're interested in sickness and disease as well as your health. Okay, then we come to processing of foods. Well, we have processors all over the country, and these processors do everything from just cutting up your food and grinding it to adding all kinds of things to it, taking things away from it, making it anything that you might want to do to food, the processor would do. And they actually have the freedom to do this. It is a well-known fact that if one of them was discovered that they were causing or had a cancer food, actually a food out that would cause you cancer, and somebody told them about it, and they didn't want to take it off the market, that by the time it got through all of our courts and everything, it'd take over 5 years to even get out a proven cancer-forming thing. So we kind of have a problem there with these processors, but they have the freedom to do that. If you wanted blue chickens, and everybody else in this country wanted blue chickens, these processors would deliver blue chickens to you. And you can see why, because they have a market for them. So that's kind of the way that works. Now let's tell you about something a little more serious, and that's called irradiated foods. Well, today, many of these processors or these type of people want to irradiate our foods. Well, irradiation is such that when the food is irradiated, it will change the taste, it'll change the flavor, and it will change the nutritional value. And in fact, in all the tests that's been run with many kinds of test animals, by the second generation, the entire set of animals was no longer able to exist. They all died. They could not reproduce themselves. So irradiated foods, if you ate a lot of them. Now their argument is you don't have to eat all of them. You can always eat a few other foods. But the point is, it kills a lot of the value that we need in our foods today. Well, then there's another type. What do you think about human waste in foods? That doesn't sound too good to me. I don't know about you folks, but in human waste in foods, there is a large group or an organization that says, gee, you know there's a lot of nutritional value left in human waste? We want to put that in foods. We can actually make that any color you want, any flavor you want, any taste, any odor, make it look like anything you want, and we can put it in food and fool the public. They don't have to know it's there. But thank goodness some of these controls are saying, no, we want you to label it. We want you to say what's in it. And they say, well, if we label it, nobody would eat it. You wouldn't want to. They said, let's call it pink fluff. Let's call it something like that, like they're doing with many things. So there is a situation. Now there's chemicals in foods. A lot of people would like to tell you they have to put chemicals in foods. Well, it runs between 1,000 and 10,000 chemicals according to who you listen to. But there's a tremendous amount of them. Some of the estimates have been 197 different chemicals in an average meal. Up to 5 to 8 pounds of chemicals you eat each year. Now, if you've had any studies in health and nutrition, you happen to know that 1 or 2 chemicals doesn't always come out just 1 or 2. You start adding and multiplying. Pretty soon you got 8 or 10 chemicals, and they all add and multiply, till pretty soon you have so many combinations of chemicals that our finest chemists couldn't possibly tell you all of the ramifications from all those different chemicals. And they're going into our foods. We must have a very powerful body to be able to withstand that kind of thing. Now we do the farming part. Well, gee whiz, farming today, they poison the seed that goes in the soil, they poison the soil, and then of course they continue to make step after step of poisoning the product as it grows, and then they finally poison the finished harvested item to the time you get it. And we'll have more to say about that later.
Well, I'm Bud Beadle, and I'd just like to say, if those people are in control, what's the end result?
Well, let's face it, the health of our country is nothing to brag about. Many people have said that we're 39th down on the list of health. The American male is 39th down. We have hospitals filled to overflowing. We have babies born with cancer. We have all of our heart troubles to affect about, what, 2 or 3 Americans out of every 4. We have cancer to affect everybody. The average aspirin taking, and I shouldn't just say aspirin, but painkillers these days, there's so many different kinds, the average is about over 1 per day for every man, woman, child in the United States. You're expected to be in the hospital twice a year. Now we know some of you won't be in the hospital your share, but other people will be more than their share. So it's really a terrific problem area. When you have 500,000 babies born with cancer, I mean, I kind of shed a tear for that. I hate that. I really don't like something like that to come along. And we talk about lifespan. Well, get your chart out on the lifespan facts. We're going to be able to talk about that for just a few minutes over here. This is the lifespan facts. We hear today that so many people believe our lifespan has increased, when actually I feel it's reduced. And it's going to be up to you to see if you feel so too also. You know, insurance companies are insuring living people, not babies dying at birth. And doctors and health services, they brag about, gee, how well we're doing, how we're one of the greatest countries in the world. Well, maybe in this field we're not. Here's a fact. A 40-year-old male has the worst life expectancy than almost any other country. We know of at least 39 other major countries that have a better one. So about 200 years ago, the lifespan is said to be about 50 years. Today, it's said to be somewhere around 70 years. Now, this may be a little more or less. Well, 200 years ago, we were losing about 50% of all the babies born. They didn't know a lot about bacteria and diseases and cleanliness like we do today. So then these babies are dying at birth. And over here, our average is about 1% of the babies dying at birth. So there, we got to give them a lot of nice credit because they're saving a lot of babies being born. I'm going to allow you folks at home to understand and read these little details, but here's an example. 100 babies are born 200 years ago. 50 die at birth, or 50 die at 100 years, and 50 die at birth. Well, the average lifespan then is 50 years. So the adult is expected to live to 100 years old, which is the true longer lifespan. That's after he's an adult. But today, 100 babies are born, 99 die at 71 years. 1 dies at birth. The average lifespan then is 70.29 years. So the adult expected to live 70 years, the true shorter lifespan. There's one other little part that I would like to talk about, and that's the Hunzas. They are considered probably a group of people in the Himalayas or Tibet that is to live the longest of any people I know, even though now and then we hear about another group somewhere in South America or South Africa or something like that. But many of the Hunzas live to be 150 years old. They basically have almost no diseases. They're very, very healthy people, and they're strong, and there's so many things about it. There's some books out on the healthy Hunzas. You ought to get one to read it.
Jack, my name is Rick Lemons, and the question I'd like to ask is, what about government controls?
Well, in the government controls, they're probably doing all they can under the conditions, under the consideration of the nutritional foundation that we already talked about. But a real problem is they have the FDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, and the AMA, that's not really a government agency, but they're involved so deeply in the government that they practically control it. They have the United States Public Health Service, the Federal Drug Administration. Some of these do their best, but their best just isn't good enough. We have too many people that's not healthy today. There's a lot of drug interest, and of course money interests and lobbyists. So there's a lot of things that controls those. We need more people that knows about nutrition to perhaps change that.
Mr. Diel, what can we do about it?
Okay, what we need to do about it is educate ourselves. We ought to educate us so that we, and also in school, in schools, but we need, as parents, we need to educate ourselves. We need to make sure that it's taught in our schools. They teach a lot of other things, but if you teach somebody, say, how to be an astronaut, and he's now ready to go be an astronaut, and you haven't taught him about health or nutrition, next thing you know, he's not strong enough to pass the requirements to be an astronaut. And many areas like that. Things even affect our mind. So we need to really educate ourselves that way. Read labels. Sometimes when you read a label, they've only got 2 or 3 major food items in it, and all the rest of them, for maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 items, are some kind of a chemical. Sort of a suggestion. If you can't pronounce the word, if you don't understand it to be food, chances are it really shouldn't have to be there. It's some kind of an additive, a conditioner, a filler, a preservative, some kind of a chemical that is not needed. And another thing, a lot of chemicals are used to fool you, to take the place of a quality food. If the food item is grown so poorly that it tastes bad, they can add enough salt to it, or enough sugar to it, or vinegar, or some other flavoring to make it taste strong enough. And many, many foods are done that way. So you read the labels. If the label isn't just good food, perhaps with no additives added, don't buy the product. Be as much of a person as you can. So be very selective in your buying habits. That was the best way to get them to produce products, or the processors not to do certain things to products, so that they'll be good for us. Then you can also complain to manufacturers. If you don't like the idea of a lot of chemicals being in your foods, complain to them. Say you want some foods without preservatives, without chemicals. You want some real food today. And the next thing is boycott. For goodness sakes, just don't buy it. Be strong enough that you don't buy certain foods. Go out of your way to buy some better type of food.
Well, if enough of us were to boycott what's bad for us, wouldn't that change things?
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we want to happen. You see, companies provide what sells. And as I said before about the green chickens or something like that, if everybody wants some kind of green chicken, then for goodness sakes, they're going to provide it for us. So that's one of the things. Advertising pushes a lot of products. Well, we see all these advertising. Have you ever noticed that a lot of the things that are advertised are things that are not really particularly good for us? But they advertise them. But very seldom do you see things that are really good for us advertised. When's the last time you saw broccoli advertised, perhaps? Or an avocado? Or just plain produce and fruit? Most of the time you don't. So people are not informed properly about what's out there for us. We get sort of a one-sided view of things. The idea, see, maybe 100 years ago or more, there was about 100 food items in an average grocery store. Today there is about 10,000 in one of our large grocery stores. Well, what do you think made up the difference? It's all of these processed up, canned and packaged and bottled, and different kinds of foods are taken away and added to, and total changes than from the basic types of foods. So you are very important. And if you're going to be informed, and during this series you'll be informed on things, those things you really believe in, push them. And each person might believe in a few different things than somebody else. And we're not any of us perfect, so there's going to be some things that some of us are for and other things somebody else is for. But all told, we hope it comes out better like each of us would like to have. This program is very big. We hope to get throughout the United States in about another year or two. We'd like to get thousands and thousands of people having this program in hand. Well, that means each of you then can do something about it. And that's what we really want. You are important. And now that you're going to be informed, some of these companies will change. They just want to sell you something. And if we can tell them what we want, they'll sell us what they want.
Are foods natural when they say natural?
Today, the word natural is being used in just about everything you can imagine. And natural is just not always what it's cracked up to be. For instance, there is no standard today for natural foods. Dirt, hey, that's natural. Not too interested in eating it, of course. Poison plants, they grow out here in the yard somewhere. They're natural too. Well, that doesn't interest me at all. Well, then we get down to something that does interest a lot of people. Sugar. Well, white sugar. You ever seen that growing out there in the field any place? Most of the time you don't, okay? So it's a very highly processed item, and is processed down to the point that it turns into a plain chemical. So no longer is sugar natural. Can't be natural. So they deceive you in indicating that these things are natural. They'd like to use it because natural sells today. Well, I'd like for you to turn now to your chart on natural food, and I'd like to show you my standard. Okay, this is my standard here. Natural food is a food that can be found living in nature, ready to eat, with or without heating. Nothing is to be added and nothing is to be taken away except a non-edible husk, bone, skin, or seed. Here's an example. Raw sugar cane stalk, okay? It may be crushed to juice. The juice can be drunk raw. Well, this is natural. Not that we want to do that very much. When you heat it, cook it to remove the water, it also kills the enzymes, and that's taking away. Further processing removes more minerals and vitamins, and in fact practically every mineral and vitamin is removed, and it leaves only a chemical and some empty calories. So sugar is not natural. Adding chemicals to grow the cane is adding to the cane and therefore cannot be natural. Now here's an example, a cut of beef. Well, no chemicals or hormones can be used in the animal or its food. It may be cut or ground and cooked. It can be called natural only if raised naturally on the range without unnatural fattening methods. They fatten cattle today up in a little bit of a pen, and they leave them there feeding them hormones and anything else they can do to make them fat, all their food and grain, and they end up with a very fat animal to increase the price.
What exactly does organic food mean?
Okay, organic food is a very special type of natural food. And of course, just like natural, there is no standard today telling us that the food is organic. Everybody's trying to just make a guess at it. There's two factors that's required to have organic food. One is no chemicals, and another one is that the soil is absolutely enriched with natural humus and organic matter, so it's going to grow a healthy quality plant up. So turn to your chart on organic foods, and I'd just like to show you what my standard would be. The organic food definition, and this is my standard again, is organic food is food raised on soil that for 5 years or more has been enriched with organic matter and compost to the point of being rich humus filled with earthworms and natural soil bacteria. In addition, the soil has not had any added chemicals or sprays used for that same 5 years. Basically, all or most soil nutrients are present. Both enriched soil and the absence of chemicals are required for the title of organic to fit. True organically raised produce will never need insect controls or poison sprays. At least 3 natural antibiotics are produced in the plants along with good health. Insects are not interested in healthy plants and are, by God's plan, meant to destroy sick plants just as large animals attack the sick and dying or weak animals. The food obviously must look and taste excellent and have no pest damage. Tests will prove these foods have far more nutrients than chemically raised food.
Can I eat just whatever I crave?
Well, I'd like to tell you a little story to try to explain that. You see, in a white sugar as an example, there is something in the white sugar, and I'm not sure anybody knows exactly what it is, but it makes you crave it. And in fact, it is a soft drug, we call it. Not hard drug like some of the hard drugs, but it's a soft drug, and it makes you want the sugar. It doesn't know that the B vitamins that's there, it doesn't know they're missing. That's been refined out. So that means you're craving probably one of the B vitamins, and it's not in the sugar. So you keep craving it. You want more of it and more of it. Today, sometimes 60 to 70% of a person's diet is white sugar and white flour. And it's got a lot to do with this craving. Now, so there's a lot of processed food that's out there the same way. And we say no to that. It is so processed, they've taken so many of the nutrients out of it, that even if you still crave it, you may be making a major mistake. Now the different situation arises whenever you eat a natural food, where the whole food item is there. It is quite okay then to say, well, I crave some steak, I crave breakfast, or something that's natural and whole.
I know an old person who never seems to eat well. How is that?
You know, only these chemicals that we have around today has been around for maybe 20, 30, 40 years. And in fact, they've been more and more as they get closer to this date. But as we go way back, we may have somebody that was born 80 or 90 years ago, and we look at him and say, boy, that's fabulous health. Gee, he smokes like a fiend, and he eats anything and everything he wants. Well, today we've got a different story. That gentleman may not have smoked until he was 21, because that's usually the pattern that they had back in those days. And he probably lived on a farm, or he had just those 100. Remember I said there was 100 products in a normal store? Not the 10,000 we have today. So he built a strong body, a much healthier body. He is now able to do a lot of things that we cannot do. You can't have a child born today that the air, the water, the soil is polluted. All of their food is polluted. Baby food's polluted. The mother is polluted even if she breastfeeds. It's a real problem. They aren't going to be expected to get along as good as we look at some of these 70, 80, 90-year-old people that got a good, strong body before they reach these ages you're looking at. And even tobacco is not going to harm that person near as much as it's going to harm some of our young kids starting out at 10 and 11 and 12 years old.
What can you say about vitamins?
There's a lot of things to say about vitamins, and frankly, this particular series, I don't want to cover a lot of things about vitamins. I'll just talk about a few of them and let you know that the vitamins, you can find information in a lot of the stores on vitamins. To me, foods are more important. And there's so many books at the health food stores to cover all about vitamins, and you can buy, get the books anywhere. Well, there are some things that's important. Let's say vitamin A. That's called an anti-infection vitamin. People have all kinds of infections. And so vitamin A is a nice vitamin you can take. Make sure, of course, all these vitamins are natural. Then there's about 22 B vitamins. Well, with 22 B vitamins, even the finest vitamin pills that you can buy may only have 8 or 10 or 12, maybe at the very most, in the finest pills. Well, B vitamins are some unusual things. When you take one group of B vitamins and you miss a few of them, your body will become deficient in those few that's missed. So if you get too many of one, you'll become deficient in the others. So that means if you take a vitamin pill with 10 or 11 B vitamins, it's automatically making you deficient in the others. And so that's why you need to get it out of food. We'll talk about that too in a little bit. The next thing would be vitamin C. Vitamin C is a tremendous helper, and it's a vitamin that is an antibiotic. Now this really means, and I hope none of you that have this happen, you could literally get bit by a rattlesnake and take enough C, and in this case it probably should be by injection to get it to you quickly. You could get enough C that it would literally counteract. It's an antibody. It would take care of those antibodies that's in your system from the poison. And so vitamin C is necessary for that. Vitamin C is also valuable to literally aid every other vitamin that you might take, or aid the utilization of all your foods. So it's a very good thing. We all like the idea of vitamin C in orange juice. Well, an average orange might have 45 milligrams of vitamin C. Well, you can get tablets with 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C. And in fact, if you come down with a disease or snake bite, you might need quite a few thousands of milligrams a day. Well, vitamin D is called a sunshine vitamin. So if you expose your skin to the sunshine, a lot of people think that you're going to develop or process some vitamin D. Well, if you've just bathed and washed the oils off of your skin, forget it. You're not going to get any vitamin D from that with your skin clean. But if you are out there and there's oils on your skin, then the oil that's on the surface of your skin can be converted to some vitamin D. All right, the next thing is vitamin E. Now we're going to have a lot more to say about vitamin E shortly, but vitamin E is a virility food. It's a very special item that probably helps you to be more potent. It probably helps you more energy, and I like to think of it probably as one of the finest things to clear up adhesions or scarring. It is really great for that, but it has to be natural vitamin E. Vitamin F is for your liver bile and to help you digest your fats. And you could think of it as a fatty acid or part of the natural things in fats.
Are natural vitamins better than the synthetic?
Absolutely, and that's in my opinion. And maybe you can decide for yourselves on that. Synthetics are made from crude oil. Think of them as artificial food. Now, since when does artificial food ever be as good as natural food? They're coal tar, they're carcinogenic, they can form cancer in your body, they have been proven to cause gray hair, they literally act differently in your body than other types of natural vitamins. And that is hard to explain. Say, for instance, you have an atom, and maybe the electrons are spinning around this atom one particular direction. If you have a synthetic one that looks just like it, maybe the atoms are spinning in the other direction. But that's just for a difference. Another difference that I might show you is, say, if you want to shake somebody's hand and both of you extend the right hand, they fit nicely. But if one extends the left hand and one extends the right hand, they don't seem to fit just right. Try it sometime. So they're totally different. And there's so many chemical differences out there, I would just tell you they're not very good. And one of the best ways to explain this is in this chart on the real vitamins for vitamin E. So I'd like to show you this chart now for vitamin E. Okay, this chart shows what I call real vitamin E. Now, natural vitamin E is mixed tocopherols. And notice the ending, R-O-L-S, tocopherols. We have a D-alpha tocopherol right on down the line here through D-theta tocopherol. They are the mixed tocopherols. Their natural mixed tocopherols, or real vitamin E, was able to help the human body many ways. The synthetic E is like D-alpha tocopherol, or tocopherol acetate, and the D-alpha tocopherol succotate, and then you have a DL-alpha tocopherol, R-E-L on the end of this. There's a few other variations of this, but any variations like this is a synthetic. These man-made synthetic crude oil coal tar products cannot prevent the destruction of vitamin A and unsaturated fatty acids and have never been known to help the human body. The natural vitamin E versus synthetic vitamin E, these were each tested for 30 years in 2 different areas in this country. The natural vitamin E had many uses in our body. The synthetic had none, and it took them 30 years to finally figure out why the 2 tests were coming out differently. And they finally found out that only the natural vitamin E was able to do what we need done in our body. There's a little bit more I'd like to say about vitamin E. Today in America, 25% of all married couples cannot have children. It has reached that level. And if you know your history, there was a time back when in the Roman Empire it reached a level where they couldn't hardly have any children either. But at that time, it had to do with lead and pewter. And they had too much lead and they couldn't produce them. Today, it's not lead, but probably a lot of the lack of the natural vitamin E. Miscarriages many times will happen to a woman because she does not get adequate vitamin E. Crib deaths, when a child dies in the crib and seemingly for no reason at all. Many times it's because that child was fed on milk, not breast milk, or in case it was breast milk, the mother did not get enough natural vitamin E. And I just wanted you to see a tie in there. We must do something about this natural and synthetic problem here in vitamin E.
The USDA and Federal Drug Administration says all food is the same. What do you say?
Well, obviously all food isn't the same, but they say that a peach is the same from one place to another place, no matter how you grew it or in anywhere it's at. As long as it's a peach, it's all the same. They're trying to say that the way you'd grow that peach, whether it was naturally grown or whether it was grown on chemical fertilizers, that it'd be the same. But they go so far as to say if it's rotting in a bowl, if it is flat out rotting down in a bowl, that you really are not supposed to say there's any difference between that peach and a good, luscious peach. If you've ever eaten a peach that is so juicy and full of flavor, it practically runs down your chin, you'll know you've got a good peach. But if you eat the kind that's mealy and mushy and a very poor flavor, you'll probably know that peach has been grown on chemical soils. So that's the story about rotten food. That rotten food is looked at as the same as good fresh food. Now there's a lot of other differences. Even one side of an apple will have more vitamins on it than the other side when they're actually tested for the amount of vitamins. The protein losses in the wheat belts have dropped down not just 10%, but sometimes 20, 30, 40% from what they used to be whenever the soils were still well stocked with natural nutrients and organic matter. Now they keep depleting the soils using chemicals on it, so pretty soon there's nothing but those chemicals to be putting on there to grow it. So if all the foods are supposed to be the same, why are there so few people healthy? And right now, there's very few people healthy. Less than 2% of the population is considered healthy.
Do you know of any proof that shows the difference?
There is quite a lot of proof out there, but to be able to tell all about it on here would probably best be described by just a series of tests that's been run. And it's just a simple one, real simple one. That's dogs and pigeons and rats were tested using white bread and whole wheat bread, keeping those 2 standards. They found that whenever the animals would eat the white bread, that they would gradually die. They would gradually lose their sheen on their coats or their fur, something like that. They would definitely become very unhealthy, and you would find the animals dying. Where if the same test was run with the same number of animals using whole wheat bread, the only difference, they would be very healthy and vibrant, and cages have healthy animals in them. So that's just a test that's been run. I saw one of these tests down many years ago. It was in the early 50s that it was run down on Orange Avenue. And the test was actually stopped by the Humane Society because it was so inhumane to feed those animals white bread because they were getting sick on it. But of course we're allowed to eat it ourselves and feed it to our children. And in fact, this white bread they call enriched. And they enrich it 4 or 5 ways with synthetic vitamins, some of them known to cause cancer and gray hair. And it's even against the law in Canada and quite a few other countries to enrich the bread. But it's quite legal in America to feed your family enriched bread.
Well, can you give us an example of some things that we can do to make some changes that are needed?
Yes, there's one real particular one. And during our introduction tape, we talked about it, and we said, gee, you know, there's some children that perhaps are being treated in a certain way, and they may end up dying. And there's children that ending up with some brain damage. Well, this is the exact subject that you've asked here. The question is that I want to cover is fluoride toothpaste. Now, today we have fluoride toothpaste. In fact, if you go in a grocery store, you can seldom find any toothpaste that's not with some kind of fluorine or fluoride in it. Now, of course, fluoride came about a long time ago, and there was some tests run in Newburgh and Kingston, a couple of cities, parallel cities, and these tests were run to find out one city was fluoridated and one wasn't. Well, before the test ever finished, they decided that they wasn't getting good enough information, and pretty soon the dentists and various civic groups were backing each other up and pushing the fluoride because they wanted it to be good. But they have never proved that any of the time that the fluoride was any good. So the main thing is that we have now fluoride toothpaste are out there with a lot of claims to preventing cavities. The best tests indicate 2% or less advantage to having fluoride if there is any advantage. And the testers themselves say that when you get down to 2%, it could go either way and you don't know one thing about it. Whenever dentists that done the testing at these cities, they actually check these children's mouth, and they would find that even if there was less numbers of decay, the decay would be much larger. The whole tooth would be eaten away in some of the kids that had fluoride. The whole tooth would be hollowed out or ruined. The main thing I want to tell you about fluoride is that when you have your child, say you have a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old child, and you take them to the dentist, usually some dental assistant of some type will put a fluoride material, in their child's mouth. They actually put enough fluoride in that child's mouth to kill 10 children. That is how deadly it is. Now, when Dr. Mendelsohn was at New York City, and he had a large group of over 300 dentists in one location, he asked the question to those dentists, how many of you give the fluoride treatments to children? And of course, every dentist did. Then he asked them, how many of you have an antidote for the fluoride poisoning in your office? None of them had the antidote. And then he told about a little boy that I'll call Joey right now. And this little boy had been in the dental office, and they put the fluoride in their mouth, and the little boy had swallowed a very small amount of this fluoride. He started to go into convulsions. They searched for an antidote. They were in a medical complex, not only with dentists, but with medical doctors. None of them, all together, could save the little boy's life, and he died in 2 hours. That's how potent some of that poison is they put in the mouth. Now, the next thing is that we all give, or most of us, give our children the fluoride toothpaste. A small, medium-sized toothpaste has enough fluoride in it to kill a child if it would eat the whole thing. I called a major toothpaste company, and they said, yes, that's right, but they won't eat the whole thing because we put another chemical in it to make them throw up. So they would not keep down if they swallowed the whole toothpaste. So now we go into the idea, well, what is fluoride? Well, fluoride is a protoplasmic poison, and let me mention what that is. Our entire body is made up of protoplasm. Our brain cells, and of course, our eyeballs, every part of our body is protoplasm. So every minute microscopic drop of fluoride is a deadly poison to our protoplasm. Now, second, it is an enzymatic poison. Now, our body is made up, again, of processes that are usually by an enzymatic action. Different enzymes, and sometimes 500 of them or more have been isolated in the liver alone to perform different jobs in our body. For instance, if we would, by accident, swallow a bean, we would not find that bean floating down our arm somewhere as a blood vessel, because enzymes would have broken it down into component parts. And every part of that bean had to have a different enzyme to break it down. And then when it's built back up into part of our body, another different series of enzymes put each of those parts together into a part of our body. So it is now, fluoride is an enzymatic poison, absolutely kills enzymes. So now every microscopic drop, and according to Dr. Mendelsohn, 26% of the average tube of toothpaste is swallowed by children. That means they are swallowing an enzymatic and a protoplasmic poison, and to some degree it is doing permanent damage to their brain and other parts of their body. It is something we sure as heck don't really want, and we should have that changed in our system.
That's scary, Jack. Where can we get non-fluoride toothpaste?
Well, it's very hard to get. Most of the stores that we run into will not have any more unless you find some that's left over. There's a few types that still have some of the old product on hand, but that's getting very hard to find. So you have just a few things you can do. You can go to a health food store and be selective, because some of their toothpaste even have the fluoride in it, but a lot of them doesn't. So you can then pick and try different kinds of toothpaste to make up for that. You can make your own. There's a few tooth powders that you can buy that does not have fluoride in it. There are some tooth powders that do have fluoride in it. So if you pick one that doesn't have, you might make your own toothpaste, either by using water or by using hydrogen peroxide, a little bit of that with it too. I'd suggest we write to toothpaste companies, we raise heck at our grocery stores, and we try to make some changes again. That is just too bad, as far as I'm concerned, with no proof that it ever does any real good. And in fact, it's now tied to cancer also. So taking fluoride in cancer. Now, as you know, fluoride is unusual. It concentrates. It's not like chlorine in your water. When you boil your water with chlorine, it evaporates. Even leaving it set out, it can evaporate. But fluorine concentrates, and it'll even bother you in your bath. And of course, many of the companies now are feeding it, so it might become into all of our soft drinks that we have around, and other kinds of drinks. So some people get 10 to 100 times more fluoridated water, because we talk about fluoridated water only has 1 or 2 parts per million of fluoride. But even at 2 parts per million, it's found to mottle teeth, making black things on the teeth.
What about tooth decay? I don't care to go to the dentist that much.
I'm sure of that, and I don't like to, and I don't think anybody likes to go to the dentist very much. And there's some real unusual situations here. I don't want to quote people's names, but many years back, there was 3 top dentists around the country that started traveling all over the world, and they were doing comparison testing. They would go into countries where one part of the country would have a very civilized city or something, and they'd go out just a little way from there into where there was natives, you might say, to some people as very uncivilized. And they did this all over the world. And they were checking the teeth of these people. And in every case, the uncivilized ones, the ones that did not care for their teeth, they didn't brush their teeth, they didn't know anything about toothbrushes or toothpaste, their teeth was by far more healthy than the ones that were taken care of with brushing and all this dental floss and everything else. By far, the children and the people with the teeth, they died of old ages and have all their teeth there in the uncivilized areas. So it's kind of what you take in. It's kind of like, well, if you wash your arm, it doesn't make it healthy. So brushing your teeth is not what makes it healthy. It's what you take in your system that makes you healthy. And that's a little bit what this whole program is all about, so it can't be answered in just a few words.
What control do we and our parents have on our health?
Well, surprisingly enough, it seems like right now we only have control over what we can do today and for the future. I'd like for you to look at a chart. I call it human control of our own health. So I'd like for you to look at this chart and get a little bit of a feel of what kind of control or really we might have. It says human control of one's own health. There's a biochemical influence or control of destiny of life and health. How much control do each of the following have on your life? And I won't cover every point on here, but you see the percentage of control is about 24% before you're born. Has to do with your grandparents, your parents before your conception, your mother during pregnancy. All of this is before you're born. By the time you've been set your life of maturity, let's just say age 21, this 24% plus another 52%, making a total of 76%, is already passed. You can't look back. You can't go back and correct what you used to, what you look back and say, I'd like to have corrected, because by that time it's over. And so we have less and less control as we increase in age. There is a practical hope, of course. You can try to beat the odds, add as many healthy years to your lifespan as you can, reduce sickness, reduce pain and suffering, reduce problems in your family, cut the medical and doctor bills. You can still do all these things. You can live better. You can live happier lives at this time. You can reduce the chance of mentally retarded or physically handicapped children, requiring special help and much money for years, because, you know, if you have a child that's really handicapped, they're a lot of work. You can add to your life and happiness by working at good nutrition and a positive attitude, and you can help make life better for your family, your grandchildren, and future generations by buying natural products and not buying the bad products. So we're really saying, since we can't look back, it would be so much nicer if we do what we can today for the type of life we'd like to live and like for our children. So we want to do that kind of a thing. It may be too late for some of us today.
Does food really control your health?
Well, just look at it this way. If you eat no food at all, what'll happen? We'll die, won't we? That's a no food situation. If you happen to eat a lot of food, you might become obese, gain weight, or be well overweight in that case. But if you just eat the wrong foods, there's a logical conclusion there. The wrong foods is going to result in some kind of a problem.
Can you show us the main parts of what goes into good health?
Sure. Again, we have a chart for all of you to look at home. It's called the health picture. So if we'll take look to the chart, see the health picture. This chart is the health picture. It is my idea of how our health would be divided up if we divided up into a pie chart. The top part, which I claim to be about 50%, is our nutrition. And that, of course, would include our food, our air, and our water, about half. Down here we have an area as a mental or spiritual outlook, about 30% of it. And of course we have to have good attitude there and some good beliefs. Then in a very short amount over here I call the nerves and frame. Well, almost like an automobile engine. If our body gets out of shape, our vertebrae gets pinched, we're really kind of all messed up a little bit, why then the nerves and the frame gets affected, and about 20% of that. Nutrition, well, everything the body needs should be in the food, air, and water. This will provide all the building blocks necessary for prevention, maintenance, and repair. On our mental spiritual outlook, a loving, positive attitude, believing in God's plan, working in your body with the building blocks you provide. In the nerves and frame, it's just like a precision engine with perfectly fit together. All other factors work together for the best health a human body can have.
Jack, what do you think about cancer?
Well, that's a powerful question in this day and age with so many people getting cancer. Cancer is good. Now I'm going to say, relatively speaking, cancer is better to have than to be dead. And that's the thing we need to talk about in cancer. There's a process called oxygenation process. And when our body gets fouled up, in ways that we may discuss a little later, when it gets fouled up a little bit, chemicals invade our cells or whatever, and the oxygenation process, that's the normal process, won't work any longer, our body will, to stay alive, will shift to a fermentation process. And this is just to keep alive. And of course that does mess up the cells, and it goes into this cancerous situation. But it's a lot better than being dead. So I want to answer from that point. Nobody likes cancer, and I'm not trying to say cancer is a good thing to have, but at least gives us a chance to make the correction. It's a lot better than being dead.
How could someone change back this process?
It is reversible. This process is reversible. It's not easy, and it's not very many people that even knows how, and a lot of people are even afraid to try. But as long as you can eat and utilize foods, in other words, you can still chew, you can still digest, you can still make good use of the foods, you have a chance. Again, I have a chart that I'd like to show some different points on this called a cancer reversal. And there'll be some suggestions on it. These are cancer reversal suggestions. Obviously, if a person has cancer, we're going to have to change something they've been doing, because something you have done wrong. It didn't just miraculously come. There was something done wrong. So we got to change your life. And a way to do that, one, is to reduce stress. Now there's many, many ways to have stress, and we're going to be talking about stress in another chart soon, but the idea is reduce stress. It may be stress at work, it may be stress at home, you have to stop various kinds of irritations, there's noise, smoky places, chemicals, lights flashing, just about anything. You have to change how you think about things and relax. You have to change your diet. The old one got you where you are. Think about that. The old diet you had, how you were doing and what you were eating got you where you are. You must have high proteins, of quality type of proteins. This helps to reduce your stress. Increase your foods with the B vitamins. And we're talking about sources of B vitamins as liver, yeast, and wheat germ as some of the main sources. Then you have to cut out things that destroy B vitamins. And this list could go on and on. But one of those things is sugar and white flour products. Because these are partialized products, they take from your body. They take some of the B complex from your body just to metabolize them. Coffee destroys the B complex, and coffee also washes out the B complex just because it's liquid. Tea, again, another drug. Coffee has caffeine, tea has thiene and caffeine, both alkaloids. They cause a problem in your body that helps to destroy some of these B vitamins. Even chocolate is another habit-forming drug. It has theobromine, and that's just like the tea and the coffee type of drugs. And then, of course, smoking has about 98 different poisons in smoking, and a lot of them destroy the B vitamins. Then, of course, the regular drugs of all kinds, and even drugstore drugs. Anytime you throw added chemicals in the body, it helps to destroy a lot of the B vitamins. Alcohol, again, helps to destroy B vitamins. And in fact, just drinking water. Somebody says take 8 glasses of water. Okay, it's the best water in the world. But you drink more water than you need, it washes out the B vitamins, because B vitamins are water soluble. So now we're destroying a tremendous amount of B vitamins. And you've heard the old story about burning your candle at both ends, you know. You're not sleeping your 8 hours at night. Well, don't let anybody kid you. I don't care whether you're a child or an older person. Any of these people need about 8 hours of sleep. 7 will do pretty well, but you need about 8. The little children, of course, do need more than that. There's an attitude change you'll have to adjust to. You need to be positive and not negative as much as possible. Sometimes these things are hard to do. You have to believe your body can repair itself. There is things within your body that is able to, by direction from your mind, you're able to help your body. I say help it. Some methods your body has it. A direct body's healing powers to the cancer areas. So you direct those healing powers, and many times it can be useful as long as you're doing the other things. Let's face it, you can't have a good attitude about it if you haven't changed anything. That's almost like dreaming. That's why when you go to hospitals and doctors, any of those people that say, okay, you haven't changed anything, how do you really expect to get well or stay well if you don't change anything? Okay? Pray for God to help you. Those of you spiritually, this could be a very valuable item. Have faith, you will get well. You can't go around very negative and dragged out and say, oh, I'll never get well, I'll never get well. It won't work. Improve the quality of your diet. Now, you eat as many organic and natural foods as possible. You cannot continue to eat all the chemicals that's in all of our foods and get bad water and everything else. You have to change some things. Use a juicer. Drink fresh fruit and vegetable juice daily because it's not cooked food. You get all these enzymes and vitamins in that. Drink the spring water. It's bottled. Some of the things that you do every day is important here. The things like you eat breads and cereals every day. You maybe have things that are in natural oils and fats every day. You have drink water and liquids every day. Pick the very best you can get. Reduce the contact with all chemicals. That could be makeup. That could be cleaning chemicals around the house. That could be chemicals around your job. You've got to reduce them. Only if you want to get well, keep in mind. Only if you want to get well. If you keep on the same thing, you may not have to. Eat the best balanced diet you can. There's a lot of what I call fattest diets out there. Eat one kind of a food, or just drink your food, or something like that. You need a balanced diet so your whole body will function correctly. When it's necessary, and if in this case, I'm sure it will be necessary, see a nutritional expert doctor for natural treatments. If you can find a medical doctor that have got several years of experience in the field of natural health and nutrition, why, of course, you can go see those. But if they don't have that, most doctors are not trained in natural nutrition, They aren't trained at any of the medical schools in the United States. There's a few extra hours they can get, so they have very poor training in it. I hope this tape will encourage a lot of them to get the right training in natural nutrition. See a chiropractor for vertebrae realignment if needed. Well, if you've been in an accident or you've just got your vertebrae messed up and it's pinching the nerves and your body does not know that some area of your body is under a stressful condition or is getting cancer or whatever else the problem might be, this may relieve that and open up those nerve passageways so that your body knows there's a problem there, and that's one of the first steps in getting it well.
I noticed that you didn't say anything about the accepted treatments like radiation and chemotherapy and surgery. Why?
Well, when someone has cancer, that's probably one of the largest problems in all their life, to have to decide to do something different than the so established treatments. But when you can think of it in its basic terms, that you caused the cancer yourself by your type of diet and the chemicals and the imbalances that's there, and then think of this way. The medical treatments cannot change the process back. Surgery, of course, cuts something out, and of course radiation burns something out, and your chemical type of chemotherapy uses a type of poison that they hope will direct right toward the item and not hurt anything else. But it's a type of poison that they use. Well, none of these actually changes this process back that's so important. Now, if you ask a doctor, "Doctor, how did I get this cancer?" He'll say, "I don't know." "Doctor, why is the cancer here and not somewhere else?" He'll say, "I don't know." You say, "Doctor, how can I cure this cancer?" And he will say, "I don't know." He has immediately erased his professionalism. He no longer is a professional, he is a mechanic. Think of it, he is just a mechanic. He's wanting to perform a surgery or some kind of an operation. Now, when you finished asking those questions, you can determine a little bit better why you might not want to go that route. Again, some of the facts. Between $30,000 and $100,000 is the cost for going those routes, the medical routes. Most of it ends up in disfigurement. It ends up with pain, suffering, problems for the family and household, and most, yet today, ends up in death. Cancer has not been helped very much at all for the past 30 years. I know it doesn't sound good, but it doesn't. Whenever you are living on chemicals, and you don't stop living on chemicals, they have an impossible job to try to cure it through medicine. You can read books. I suggest one book here that you might see is Cancer Overcome by Diet, An Alternative to Surgery. This is by Louise Greenfield. In any case, there's quite a number of books out there, some very successful ones. One of the highlights of this book that to me was interesting is throughout the book she was telling how difficult it was to find natural foods and to eat natural diets. Well, but in the meantime, she'd tell about some famous movie star or somebody else in the news that got cancer and went the medical route. And she would finally say after some period of time, "Well, I'm having a rough time, but I'm still alive. They didn't make it." So it has that kind of interest to you.
Can alcoholism be cured with proper nutrition?
Yes, it sure can. And the reason being is alcoholism is a deficiency disease. I want you to realize something. You have probably anywhere from 3 trillion cells to perhaps more than that in your body. Now think of a playground with 1,000 kids on it playing. And all those kids is hungry. And they come running over the fence hungry, and they want something to eat, and they're about to tear the fence down. Well, when you have trillions of cells that says, "Give me something, give me something," then those cells are going to probably get the best of a lot of people. Well, but alcoholism is a deficiency disease. It means that you probably have eaten wrong and not eaten the balanced meals and not eating all you should eat for quite a period of time. Now, if it isn't that way, it looks the other direction. That is, you start drinking some alcohol, and the more alcohol you drink, the less food you eat. So in either case, it comes out you're not getting an adequate diet and you're deficient. So you have to make that diet up, very much so. Just completely rebuild and replenish the nutrients in your body with good foods.
Mr. Diel, is drinking alcohol okay? I thought alcohol was a poison to your brain. It made you an alcoholic.
Well, the literature on it, when it's studied, shows that it does not make you an alcoholic at all to drink alcohol. There's probably, I believe the last figure is 52% of the people in the United States drink alcohol, but there's only a small percentage that does become alcoholic. And so it's not the alcoholism that makes it. Now, here's a story that you need to know. If you ever would go out and pick some grapes, you will find, especially on the dark blue grapes, you will find a very light white powder on those grapes. And that light white powder happens to be yeast. It is on there so tightly that you cannot hose it off with a garden hose. You've got to rub it off and polish it to try to get it off. And that yeast is designed to be on those grapes, so when the grapes are crushed, the yeast combines with the sugars in the grape, and it forms an alcohol, about 12, 14% sometimes. It goes through 1,400 chemical processes, they've learned, to form that alcohol. It's a very natural thing. Now, within our body, in our liver, there is an enzyme designed there, along with as the grapes were designed by our Creator, and that enzyme is called dehydrogenase. And that enzyme breaks down the alcohol. Now, like many things, and we're going to talk Scripture for a minute, many things says in moderation. Now, nowhere in the Scriptures does it teach to get drunk. It teaches you to eat good foods and eat right kinds of natural foods and that sort of thing. It says don't add to them, don't take away. Well, alcohol is a natural food. And as long as you're eating the natural food, you will not crave it, because you will have all the foods you need and you just won't crave it. There'll be no more craving for that than a glass of water or a glass of orange juice or anything else that you would drink, especially the non-chemical items. So this dehydrogenase is going to break down the alcohol up to a limit that's within reason. And that, I can't tell you. I have heard it might be a couple of drinks or something like that. I am not wanting to recommend that people drink alcohol, especially people that don't drink or don't like the idea. It is not, one of those great things. But it is a type of food that as long as you have your dehydrogenase enzymes in there and you keep it in moderation and you eat a good diet, you won't crave it. And of course, I expect good moral living to go along with it, so you aren't encouraged to be drunk, drunkenness at all. And you will not get alcoholism from that point of view.
Wait a minute, Jack. Isn't alcohol a drug and addictive just like any other drug?
No, and the difference is that dehydrogenase, that enzyme. The other drugs doesn't have an enzyme like that. So they get to you. The other kinds of drugs overcome your on the Langerhans and the pancreas gland, and it just gets to you until the point is that that's the only way you want to function is with the other drugs. And anytime you take the drug away, you'll have a withdrawal symptom. You can do that with alcohol when you don't keep up your diet. But it's mostly bad diet. Those people that eat bad diets is liable to become alcoholics.
Sounds like smoking fits this category.
Yes, smoking is a lot the same way. Smoking is let's look at it as a drug. In fact, let's look at it about 98 different drugs or chemicals that's in tobacco. And any one of those could cause this habit, like you become an alcoholic, can hook you on that thing. So any one of these things. There's the same situation exists with coffee, the caffeine in coffee, the thiene in tea, the theobromine in chocolate, and even sugar has this same kind of effect. And there's an area here I'd like to show you on a chart. We call it a blood sugar level chart. And I'd like to go to that now. Okay, this chart I call the blood sugar levels. Now, you're familiar with high blood sugar is diabetes, and hypoglycemic is low blood sugar, just to point those out right now. This little chart was put together to show you between breakfast, lunch, and dinner what might happen to a normal blood sugar level. And some of these have been tested by checking your blood sugar level every 15 minutes. And it plots out. Basically, you eat a meal, it picks up, it slowly comes down below the line again, you feel hunger, you eat another meal like lunch, it picks up again, it slowly trickles down to dinner, you eat a meal, it picks up again, it stays up through the night and drops down for breakfast the next morning. Well, this problem level, down representing this line, is usually never reached when your diet is proper. Anytime anything gets below this line, you're subject to all kinds of diseases and sicknesses, and of course, as it goes even lower, death. So this is a very important line. This is a 100 means a natural normal level. Now, refined sugars makes a quick increase, shoots up, a quick drop again, more so than this, but way down here, and it drops down to below normal. Unrefined carbohydrates. Now, sugars are refined carbohydrates, but unrefined carbohydrates might be a whole baked potato or brown rice or whole wheat bread. There's a fast increase again, and then a drop back to normal is steadily, but it slowly drops back to normal. Protein, there's a slow increase, and then a slow return back to normal. Fats, there's a slow increase again, and a slow return to normal. Now, the idea is when you blend a proper diet, I won't say refined sugars as part of that proper diet, but good unrefined carbohydrates, good protein foods, and the proper fats, because they're the three main bodybuilding blocks. When they're combined, you have an increase, and it stays up there for longer periods of time. And that's why a balanced meal is what they're talking about, to eat good. Now, smoking, alcohol, and drugs, there's a very sharp increase and a quick drop to below normal. So on this chart down here, we have the smoker's blood sugar level, and I'm only covering one meal segment. So we just have lunch here, a little bit before lunch, at lunch, and after lunch. The reason for the sharp changes, and those aren't exactly plotted, but the sharp changes indicate that when a smoker smokes, he does have a pickup in blood sugar level, and that's what a smoker feels, is a lift. It's a very true and honest lift. His cells that were starving are being fed, and he feels an elation. It is good. It's a good feeling. So it goes up. Pretty soon, that cigarette's gone, and the effects of it are gone, and it drops down again, and this cycling just keeps going. I won't say this exactly represents every cigarette he smokes, but there is some people that smokes 20 to 30 cigarettes a day, maybe even a lot more than that. And so maybe every 15 or 20 or 30 minutes, they're getting this cycle. The trick is, yes, it goes up and down, but most all the time, this cycle is below the normal cycle up here. And quite a few times, it will drop below the problem level. This one we were talking about up here. It will drop below that. And at this point, they're susceptible to all kinds of diseases. In one test of about 54,000 people, balanced for exact working conditions as close as they could get it, male, female, age groups, almost everything as close as they could get it, they found out that smoking caused roughly twice as many diseases or twice as many problems, twice as many died and so forth, the smoking did. And that would be because most of the time it dropped below this level. So a smoker receives a lift while they're smoking to near the non-smoker's normal level. Between smokes, the level drops to lower than normal. The below problem level, this level here, that smoker is susceptible to many diseases. So it's a very, very important thing. This is exactly what's happening in the human body. There's something else I would like to tell each of you about smoking. A lot of people believe that smoking causes cancer. Well, I'm not here to dispute that at all. I'm sure that it does in some cases, but I'd like to explain it from at least a different point of view. All right? There's rabbits that have had their bronchial tubes cut out of them and put onto a lab bench and arranged so that they can stay alive for quite a few hours. And then a machine has been set up on them so that smoke will be drawn through the rabbit's bronchial tubes. Now, a rabbit was picked because in their bronchial tubes are these little hair-like little hairs that are waving back and forth about 6 times a second. And so they run this smoke through there. It takes about the equivalent of 1 cigarette before it stops those hairs from moving back and forth. Now, we have those in our own bronchial tubes, and they move back and forth to help wave out various alien pieces of product, whatever it is, whether it be from the smoke of tobacco, whether it be from asbestos, whether it be from the things we breathe and the dust and the fumes and smog, or you name it. These things are waving back and forth to wave it out. But the instant we get smoking involved, as soon as we smoke, it doesn't take very long before they stop waving. 1 cigarette. And then, as you smoke up to 1 pack, they get burned off like a wheat field, and they're no longer there to wave it out anymore. So if cancer is caused by smoking, maybe it would be a more accurate statement to say that smoking allows cancer. But there's many other situations too. One more item that I would like to explain about smoking and some of the relationships to cancer is the idea of the oxygen. Within our atmosphere, we're breathing mostly nitrogen, as you well know. And about 20% is a combination of various gases, including oxygen. Well, our human body needs about 14 to 16%, 14 to 18% perhaps, of oxygen. Well, since there is some other gases in there and this sort of thing, when we light up a cigarette and we burn the oxygen, drawing it through the cigarette, it burns up a lot of that oxygen. So all of a sudden we are burning up a tremendous amount of the oxygen and we don't have enough left to really take care of our body. Imagine a red blood corpuscle that carries the oxygen throughout our system, and it is continually moving, and it passes through the lungs for only a very short period of time. At that time, there is a large puff of smoke down there. Now, I don't know whether it's going to pick up the smoke or whether it just won't pick up the oxygen because it was already burnt up or not. But in any case, there is an added factor about smoking. It goes through, goes to your cells, and delivers now either a smoke product or it doesn't deliver the oxygen that it needs. And our whole body needs the oxygen. Remember, we talked about the oxygenation process and the fermentation process. Perhaps smoking kills enough oxygen that now our cells can shift easily into the fermentation process and we can have cancer. Do you see the connection, the tie and that sort of thing? So maybe smoking is also curable by diet, and that's the thing we need to learn about. Smoking is an item that you smoke because you're deficient. You need something. Your cells are crying out for something. And when you smoke, if you remember our blood sugar level picks up and it feeds these cells, and they're very satisfied then. And in between smoking, they get unsatisfied again. Well, if our diet is so that it's high all the time, we now no longer crave for the smoking. We no longer crave for anything. We're satisfied. Our cells are satisfied. And that's the key reason. So then smoking is curable by diet, and there is some very good pieces of information to learn that, and we're going to see very shortly.
Can you tell us a good way to quit smoking?
Yes, I'd like very much to tell you a good way to quit smoking. It is complicated enough, though, that I'm going to ask each of you to turn to your chart on how to stop smoking, and we'll cover that chart now at this time. Okay, this is the first page of 2 pages that you will have in your outline, How to Stop Smoking the Easy, Permanent, and Pleasant Way. Now, I'm just going to cover a part of this because if you are smoking and you want to stop smoking, we want you to cover all of this on both pages. But right here, the secret key is you must retrain your pancreas to produce insulin from a normal food, because right now it's not working that way. The only safe way to do this is you must eat a very nutritious diet, such as proposed within this whole series. Why you smoke now? Okay, trillions of cells in your body are crying out for satisfaction. They are unsatisfied and only get satisfaction when you smoke or take in any other high stimulation to the pancreas to produce insulin. Ordinary food will not do it as long as these high stimulants are available. And this is an example we're talking about. I call it the old mule story. Okay, Harry the mule plows fields. Right now, Harry's sitting down. Pete, the owner, says, "Harry, get up and plow." Harry just sits there. Pete hits Harry on the side of the head with a 2x4. This gets Harry's attention, so Harry gets up and plows. Well, your pancreas, the same situation is needed for your pancreas to produce the insulin correctly as needed. In your case, the stimulation is nicotine, or one or more of the 98 chemicals found in tobacco, or drugs, or caffeine, or alcohol, or even sugar, or chocolate for those who don't smoke. So all these things relate to this. A diabetic or hypoglycemic person has similar problems with the pancreas. It could produce too much insulin or too little. A correction of diet is required, and it is the only real way to correct these problems. So we're really saying that not only is smoking cured by the proper diet, but so would a hypoglycemic person with a low blood sugar and even a diabetic.
Well, what about diabetes and low blood sugar and hypoglycemia?
Well, we've covered that pretty well, as you know, that they're about the same as smoking. And in fact, having any kind of a drug addiction or any kind of a habit whatsoever that tends to control what you do is very much the same. They're all tied together with really the island of Langerhans on the pancreas gland, producing insulin, going to the liver at a direct path, picking up stored glycogen, and feeding all these cells that are starving around out there. So better nutrition is the answer to this kind of a thing too. Better nutrition is the answer. Let's look again at this blood sugar level chart. Okay, on this blood sugar level chart, again, we noted under here that high blood sugar level is diabetes and low blood sugar level is hypoglycemia. Now, one thing I hadn't mentioned before is blood sugar is not sucrose sugar. It's the kind of sugar from the products of digestion. And so the same kind of a chart, when it's running normal, we're going to have a normal curve. When we eat the proper breakfast, the proper lunch, and the proper dinner, the same kind of things are going to happen with it. All the refined products shoots it up fast. All your proteins and fats slow it out real slow. And so for a diabetic, their blood sugar level is not going normal, and there would be a modified version of this when they're diabetic, and they must make it up with either insulin injections or some kind of tablets, or correct their diet and cure the problem, rather than just living with it for a long time. One more thing I would like to say about especially low blood sugar. Low blood sugar is something that a lot of people have. They don't know they have it. Usually you'll notice if you have low blood sugar because somewhere around 10:30 in the morning you kind of feel like you need to eat, or you get a headache. You don't feel well. And a lot of times that's one of the hints that you might have low blood sugar. But low blood sugar is so powerful that it relates to criminal activities too. In one large city, I believe it was New York, but it may not have been New York, they tested 5,000 people after committing a crime. They checked their blood sugar level and found 5,000 out of 5,000 were at a low blood sugar level point when they'd committed a crime. So when you are in a low blood sugar situation, you are so unsatisfied that you're liable to do something you shouldn't do. I cannot tell you how many other types of crimes. These were mostly robberies they were talking about, mostly of that nature. But there could be many kinds of crimes that maybe if a person felt real good, they wouldn't commit the crime. But because of low blood sugar, they did not feel good. Their cells were crying out for something, and maybe they didn't satisfy them properly.
Are you going to say that healthy sex is also diet-related?
Yes, in fact, probably everything is diet-related. If you don't get any food, remember, you'd die. But healthy sex is very much diet-related. There has been many, many studies made to find out that as you, let's say, deteriorate in life, become older, let's face it, your sex drive drops off. You aren't as interested and things like that. Well, that's, again, related to a deterioration. Sometimes to know how interested you are in sex is to maybe know how close you are to the ages that no longer you would need to or care to have sex. So definitely diet is related to it. Your performance, the kind of performance you'd have. As I mentioned before, 25% of the population can't have children. I am as positive as can be that this is definitely diet related. You're prone to all kinds of diseases in life, and these diseases affect your sex life. Let's face it, if you got a headache, you feel real bad. There's the old saying, you know, I got a headache. Well, it's related to the truth of the person does not feel good, does not feel like having sex. Now, this can be corrected by some really very, very virile or a good, very special diet. And really, I don't like the word diet. Let's say just a special types of foods to be eaten. And I'd like to go and ask you to go look at my virility foods page, and we'll go take a look at that chart now. This is my virility food chart, and we're going to talk about several items over here on the left, and then this will explain a little bit about them. Like in meats, well, for protein, and meats is our main source of proteins, we also get various vitamins and minerals from these meats. It is essential for tissue building and health of the vital organs. Glandular meats are the richest sources. Pork products aren't acceptable. We'll talk about those again in a little while. Fish and kelp, well, fish is another type of a meat. Glandular health and vitality from all of that. There's iodine and protein and minerals in the fish, and they're rich in these. All shellfish are polluted, and they're not edible. Some shellfish have been known to kill 2,500 people in one area alone. Raw fruits and vegetables. Raw fruits and vegetables. Okay, when both are raw, they become the secret of life and health due to the enzymes and coenzymes, which are the vitamins or the coenzymes, with plenty of minerals and carbohydrates. When they're cooked, they have no enzymes and much less nutritional value. There's seeds, nuts, and wheat germ. Okay, when they're eaten raw, they contain the necessary enzymes and the essence of life that they could have grown into. Sunflower seeds here are the most complete food found today with every nutrient including enzymes. Yogurt and buttermilk. These are the best of all milk products. They're rich in protein. They aid in digestion but should not be mixed with meat. We also have with that cheese and cottage cheese, were just natural cheeses. I'd like to say one other thing up here about the sunflower seeds. It used to be a number of years back, we would have the idea of fallout shelters. And you wonder what to keep just in case you wanted to have a food in the fallout shelter. There's probably nothing in the world better than to have a big bucket of raw shelled sunflower seeds. They are so perfect you could eat about 2 tablespoons of them a day and survive very nicely. Okay, now we have eggs, whole wheat flour. Well, eggs have only the good cholesterol for brain food. Now we're going to talk about cholesterol shortly, but whole wheat flour should be used in place of all white flour. So that's good. Then honey is our main sweetening thing that we should sweeten our foods with. The very best sweetening agent for health. It is a real food and not a sugar when it has never been heated or refined. It is rich in 4 different sugars, some taking as long as 4 hours to digest. It is rich in protein and vitamin C along with other minerals. Some diabetes can use natural raw honey. When beekeepers feed regular sugar, the honey is not fit to eat. Molasses and maple sugar and sugar. Okay? As the second best, molasses contains minerals lost in the refined sugar. Maple sugar, or syrup, is the third best, where white sugar is a chemical, and shun it. Raw sugar, the fourth best, still contains part of the minerals that's lost in the refined white sugar. Note that raw sugar is a less refined sugar, but brown sugar is more refined than white, but it is not bleached. It is just burned or dyed as the process calls for. So you'll see some type of health food products, it'll say brown sugar in it. That's worse than even saying white sugar. Lemon and apple cider vinegar. Lemon aids the digestion, and the vinegar is a rich source of essential potassium. So here we have a list of virility foods that these kinds of foods and types of foods will help in your sex life. They'll help in any health point. They're going to help to build your health. It's not the whole story, but they'll help to build your health in this sort of thing.
What should pregnant women do?
Well, as you know, a pregnant woman has a very, very serious job in hand to do. She's going to be raising a new life, and she wants to do everything possible so that that life is healthy and definitely not in any way crippled, not mentally or physically. And nobody wants to take care of a crippled child, and it's just a shame what all goes on with crippled children. There's hospitals filled with them. There's more and more kids are having all kinds of brain deficiencies and having problems at schools today. So the trick is she should think about becoming pregnant beforehand. She should plan for it. Both the husband and wife plan for it, actually. Now, we already know that caffeine will carry over through the male to the 3rd and 4th generation sometimes and do harm. Caffeine is a type of product that actually is toxic to the vital organs. And so that's going to carry over and continue to accumulate until there's some kind of damage done. So we're saying that, yes, the pregnant woman should do things, but even her husband should do things before she gets pregnant and plan for it. They should have a very good diet, build up their diet till it's near perfect for quite some time before they become pregnant. Make sure the vitamin E, all natural of course, is plenty of it available. There's too many things for miscarriages that may happen if you don't have proper vitamin E along with this diet. A woman should eat at between 20 and 25% natural fats in her diet. Of all the tests run with every kind of an animal, it's found that when that fat content for a pregnant woman drops below 20%, most of the time, in the pregnant animals, most of the time, there's a miscarriage, or that the baby animal dies at birth or within 2 days afterwards. That's how important fats are to a pregnant woman. She should never remove them from her diet. All of us need from 20 to 25% natural fats in the diet. Now, don't get upset with that. We're not saying just go eat fat. Avocados have fat in it. Eggs have fat in it. Natural milk has fat in it. Lots of different foods and vitamins and meats have some natural fat in it. And if you use natural vegetable oils and butters and things like that, you're going to get an adequate amount of fats. So I'm not saying to go out and eat a whole lot of them, but try to arrange that 20 to 25% calorie-wise of your diet is the natural fats. Especially in the first 12 weeks, it is important not to use sugar. Leave sugar out of your diet, sweeten with a little honey or something like that, or cut down on your sugars, because at this time, the baby's brain is being formed. And the brain is being formed if you eat too much sugar, you can have definitely a retarded child. There's a definite effect on the IQ. So whether it's retarded or just a lower IQ can result in how much sugars and sweets, and by the way, alcohol converts into sugar pretty quickly in the system, so you'd want to definitely hold down, if not out totally, on the alcohol. But hold down the sugars to it. It's probably far worse than alcohol because people use a lot of it. They will drink sodas and they will eat cakes and pies and pastries and that sort of thing and get far more sugar than they would have gotten in alcohol. So sugar is a very dangerous product to eat. We don't want low IQ children. And then, of course, breastfeed your child. Breastfeed it. Of course, you've eaten a good diet. The child is going to get better food that way, and make sure you have the natural vitamin E in it, and you won't have the same worries and colics and all kinds of other problems that a lot of children go through.
Well, Mr. Diel, what about behavior problems in hyperactive children?
Well, today, that's a big problem. There's a lot of hyperactive kids around, and yet it's no wonder. Remember how we talked about all these different chemicals in foods and additives and things like that? These are the things that causes hyperactivity, is a combination of sugars, the lack of a lot of the B complexes because there's so much sugars, and then all the different additives and chemicals that's in foods. These are the things that causes a hyperactive kid, and you just have to reduce them. And one of the best ways to do that, I know it's hard, but is to go through your house, look in all your cabinets and refrigerator, and just yank out all of those things that are filled with all these additives and chemicals and sugars and stuff, and just get them out of your house. Because as long as they're in the house, they'll be used. And of course, kids eat a larger amount of them than adults. So that's the way you take care of that sort of a problem.
Jack, how can I build up my energy and my endurance?
There's a good story I'd like to tell you, and it's about rats swimming in ice water. Now that sounds terrible, but they ran a test and they dropped, one at a time, they dropped 100 rats after eating a standard diet that rats eat. They dropped 100 of them, one at a time, into ice water and timed them to see how long they could swim. This relates to our endurance that we're talking about, and energy. They averaged, after 100 of them was finished, about 12.6 minutes. Now, 12.6 minutes, well, that's quite some time. I think I've heard stories about human beings being dropped out in the North Atlantic somewhere and only lasting maybe 15 minutes. Well, what if you could last 10 times that long? You think that would increase the time that you could last out there in the cold water? Well, they took another 100 test mice and they fed them the exact same diet, but they increased 10% only on the B vitamin complex. It's kind of like giving whole wheat flour instead of white flour. And they gave them like whole wheat bread instead of white bread. Well, that increased 10% of the B complex. They now dropped 100 test animals into the water and timed them. And instead of being a 10% increase or even a twice increase, it was over 120 minutes average for each rat. And that is a big increase for a 10% increase in the B vitamins. And B vitamins are practically related to almost every disease known to man. I don't care what you've got. The B complex is related to it. And yet, the things we do every day is destroying these. Our bright and flashing lights, noises. Every time the child comes up and says, Daddy, Mommy, give me this, or can I have that, or I get this problem, or something else, there's a worry and a stress. All these things are taking away our B complex. They are water soluble, so every time we drink water, liquids, coffee, tea, cola drinks, diet sodas, you name it, we're washing out the B complex. It is one of the most important factors, and there's 22 of them. And any one of those, if you're missing, can be something wrong with what's going on. And people have this deficiency because, well, they don't like liver. See, that's very rich in the B complex. Or they don't like wheat germ. Or they don't like whole wheat. They like their bread to be white. Or they don't want yogurt. Yogurt even helps in taking care of this B complex. Or yeast. Well, probably none of us like yeast very much. But some kind of Bure's yeast is pretty good to supplement. You cannot get it by a vitamin pill. And if you go to a doctor or anybody else and they give you a shot of B12, guess what? That gives you B12. But what happened to the other 21? So there's a whole bunch of B complex that you aren't getting. And that's really quite a problem. Well, we've talked about liver and yeast and wheat germ and yogurt. Now, you must reduce your sugar intake because you have to have a lot of the B complex to metabolize sugars. These things, the sugar, it used to be in the sugar, you've refined it out, and when you take it into your body for it to properly metabolize, it needed the ingredients that had been refined out of it. So it steals from your body. It takes whatever else you might have picked up from some other food that you've taken in, it steals it to try to metabolize that sugar. And that's mainly what's wrong with sugar. It isn't just that it gives you cavities. That seems to be the only thing they're throwing any stones at. Sugar gives you cavities. Sugar damages your brain, kills your B vitamins, affects every part of your body, all kinds of health in every way. That's what sugar does. That's why it's so important to keep it reduced down as low as you can. And get plenty of the liver, wheat germ, yeast, yogurt, and the foods that can build up this. Even when you take your soda drinks and chocolate, or if you smoke, or use white flour, all of these things also destroy the type of B vitamins that you need. And of course, stress, that I want to cover in more detail shortly, but stress is something that definitely destroys it. And it probably makes a difference why one person is able to stand up against a problem in life or a business situation or a family situation much stronger than somebody else, is because their diet is adequate. So with everything killing the B vitamins and nobody caring to pick up on them, there isn't any question about why is there a problem. We all know that.
Doesn't yeast give you problems?
That's a good question. There is one chain of thinking, is thinking that everything that has yeast in it can give you this problem. Well, there's two types of yeast, and one type of yeast is what I'm going to call dead yeast. It's not active anymore. You couldn't bake bread with it, for instance. But there is living yeast, and it's like if you would buy a cake of yeast or buy some kind of a yeast powder that you're going to bake bread with. That's a living yeast, and you should not eat the kind that's a living yeast. Well, now we talked about grapes having this yeast on the outside of it. Practically everything in nature has that yeast on the outside of it. All your fruits, vegetables, and other things, it just seems to be in the air, and it can grow on a living thing. So you want to wash your fruits and vegetables very good, and not only to get the sprays and residue off of it that might be on it, but to get this yeast off of it too. So yeast is a problem if it's raw or baker's yeast or the type of yeast that can bake bread. That's definitely a problem. The other kind of yeast, like brewer's yeast or a food-grade yeast, again, it's meant to be eaten. It will not bake bread with it. And you can eat that kind of yeast, and it's all right. Now, there's some people that will disagree with that part of it. But to my knowledge, that kind of yeast is okay to eat.
Well, we hear a lot about cholesterol today. What's the story?
Well, boy, I'm glad you asked that, because not only do we hear a lot about it, we see it on all kinds of packaged goods, how much cholesterol is in the food and this kind of a thing. And there's so much controversy about what's good and what's bad about cholesterol. I'd like for you to turn to your charts on cholesterol at this time, and I'd like to show you some things that might show some light on the subject. On this chart, we have, call it cholesterol. There is good cholesterol, we call it HDL, high-density fatty lipoids, and bad cholesterol is the low-density fatty lipoids. Now, if you can picture some tiny globules, like a few dots on the page here, or you can picture some large globules, like very large chunks of things on here, then we're going to say the tiny ones are very easy to utilize in the body. It is food for the nerves and the brain, and it's necessary for health. So this type of cholesterol is the good kind of cholesterol. Now, the bad kind of cholesterol, these large globules, are really too big to utilize in the body. They, of course, go down your bloodstream and clog it all up. It's not food for anything, and it's going to clog and fill those blood vessels up. So here's the two different types, good and bad, and there's why there's a difference. Notice your brain is about 1/3 cholesterol. That's what it's made out of. So a high-fat diet provides about 800 milligrams of cholesterol daily, both kinds. Well, who even eats a high-fat diet anymore? Most people don't even eat a high-fat diet, but it only makes about 800 milligrams of cholesterol daily. A healthy liver will make about 3,000 milligrams of good cholesterol daily. So in comparison to this, you say, well, cholesterol is not very important. Well, sources of cholesterol down here, we do have good and bad, and it is important, and I think it is a major reason for heart trouble, but it's because the good cholesterol is very low and the bad cholesterol is too high. Here are some of the sources. In the good, we're going to have the eggs. It has the natural cholesterol in it, the very tiny globules, and it has lecithin in it to help break it down so it can be used in your body for food. On the bad side, all margarines and hydrogenated fats, when any of these margarines or hydrogenated fats are eaten with any type of sugar. Now, any type of sugar, surprising enough, but broccoli and cauliflower even have about 1.5% sugar in it. So there's all kinds of sugars. There is the sucrose, so you see the white sugar. There's fructose that we find in most of our fruits. And there's maltose and dextrose, whatever type of other sugars. So any type of sugar used with any of these margarines, even when the margarine says
It has no cholesterol. We are looking at a margarine that is causing the bad kind of cholesterol problem. All margarines do that. Butter, fine. That's a good product. It has the kind of cholesterol in it that's good for you. It's the tiny cholesterol that's food for your nerves and brain. We have raw milk, again, the good kind of cholesterol in it. Liver, the good kind. Vegetable oil, liquid only, has the good kind. Over here we might be talking about a lard, again, a hardened type of fat, and they usually homogenize or hydrogenate lard these days. They homogenize milk, which changes the fat totally to some kind of an artificial type fat that causes part of this problem. When we talk about a corn oil margarine, and a lot of people brag their corn oil margarine, written across the side of it is no cholesterol. Well, when something says no cholesterol, you're saying, well, it doesn't have any food for my nerves or no food for my brain. But the point is, when that kind of hydrogenated margarines, and corn oil margarine is hydrogenated, in fact, this is a very, when it says corn oil, it is like a deception. Corn oil. You can take the lid off of a bottle of corn oil and you can pour it out. But you try to unwrap a stick of corn oil margarine, it doesn't pour at all. So corn oil, it is not. It is a man-made fat that they originally started with corn oil. So that means it still is unfit for human consumption. Well, we have avocados that have some good kinds of cholesterol in them and fats that are good for you. I'm recommending lean range beef. I call it range beef because they're not fattened up in a bin with a lot of hormones and stuff injected in them. In other words, a bad kind would be unnaturally fattened beef. That would be terrible. Now we have two kinds of peanut butter here. A natural peanut butter, you can see it in the stores these days. They're much more popular. It'll have the oil raised to the top. Then you have regular peanut butter, and you can name all the brands that's out there, and they have fats added, they have sugars added, and when you combine the fats and the sugars together, it's hydrogenated fats. Guess what? You have a cholesterol-forming product. So that kind is not the kind to give to your children, send in their lunches or anything else. You want to send the natural peanut butter with real butter in it, stuff like that. Put some real honey in it if you want it a little sweet. Put some good kind of natural jam or jelly that doesn't have any sugar in it, and you can have a good sandwich for your children. Most of the raw nuts have the good kind of cholesterol. Processed foods with hardened fats are all bad, and that's what hundreds and literally just hundreds and hundreds of foods in a grocery store is filled with processing and with the hardened fats. You buy a donut, it's got hardened fats in it and sugars, and when you combine the two, you got the worst situation for the cholesterol problem. Most all lean meats are quite okay. Sure, you don't want to eat an exceptional amount of them. You cut off some of the extra fats that's on some of these meats. All shellfish, some of it is a bad kind of cholesterol. It's not good for you. So all the fish is good. Natural cheeses are okay. Chocolate, the reason chocolate is bad, one of the reasons chocolate is bad is that the chocolate is combined with the hardened fats to help make it chocolate, and it's got the sugars all in one unit. So that's why it gives you the bad kind of cholesterol. Some people end up with pimples, or they end up some kind of problems on their face, or big yellow spots around their eyes, and that kind of a thing. Maybe they're hooked on chocolate, because chocolate is a drug item. Natural cheese is good, but sweetened condensed milk, well, the test was run with this, and they gave it to some test animals, and they died. Just flat out died. Sweetened condensed milk is evidently a very, very poor product.
Many foods advertise that they have no cholesterol. Is that good?
Well, in a way, we've kind of covered that. As you see, no cholesterol means there's no food for the nerves or brain. They're kind of bragging. We don't have any kind of cholesterol in there. So that's the big deception that there is. Now, there's another area of hydrogenated fats that I'd like for you to look at. We have a chart over here. We'll talk a little more about these things. This chart on hydrogenation, I should have said hydrogenation or another type of a name for this, but we're really trying to say is the hydrogenation process. Now here's a natural fatty acid chain. Now don't look at this too closely, it's just a version of it, a chain, a fatty acid chain. It has molecules across here and molecules up and down. On the arms of the molecules, where I have the square on the end here, if there is no atom, it's fresh oil. Good for you, very fresh oil, it's good. If there's an oxygen atom attached, it's rancid. So an oxygen atom could attach here, and we now have a rancid fat. And a rancid fat nobody likes. It destroys vitamins A, D, E, and K. They're the oil-soluble vitamins, and it's bad for you. You'd throw it out, it's bitter, it tastes terrible.
If a hydrogen atom attaches, it becomes a hardened fat, a man-made fat. Okay, this is the way it happens in this fatty acid molecule. In the presence of nickel as a catalyst, the oil is boiled with hydrogen to change a food into a hard chemical. 2 hydrogen atoms attached to the arms, one on each end up here, of the fatty acid molecule, and it changes to a non-food chemical fat. And that's what combines with sugar, causing the trouble. That's the sugar tie. These hydrogenated or hardened fats contain no cholesterol. That's no cholesterol food for your brain or nerves. It is a hardened fat or a margarine. They combine with every kind of sugar and makes the bad LDL, the low density, the large globules of cholesterol. Most foods contain some kind of sugar, even broccoli and cauliflower have about 1.5% sugar. So that's the corn oil margarine deception that we mentioned before. Corn oil, it really is not an oil. It is a man-made, non-food chemical fat. And that's what margarines are, all kinds of margarines. While we're talking about fats, we should be talking about a few more things about it. One is a type of deep fat frying. That is done so popular today in many of the restaurants. Also, you find your potato chips and all kinds of deep fat fried items. Well, deep fat frying is not bad if you do it at home. If you use some fresh vegetable oil, fry your potato chip or whatever else you're deep fat frying, and when it's over with, eat your food, throw your oil away. You've heated it. See, one of the ways they make plastics today is to heat and cool down and reheat oils and fats. And by doing this over and over, it starts changing them into a plastic. And so when these people at restaurants and other places, and especially potato chip companies and all these, they will use their fats for weeks and weeks, day in and day out, either keeping them hot or heating them up and cooling them down and heating them up and cooling them down like in many restaurants. So I would suggest that you not eat any deep fat fried foods if you can get by with it, not anywhere, because you're eating a food that's kind of covered with plastic. Now, we've talked about a little bit this beef fat. I think we ought to just mention that you can buy beef that has been fattened if you want to cut off about 90% or better, cut off the fat meat of it. They do fatten them up in a little bit of a pen. They don't get any exercise. It's kind of a terrible way to go. Now, the sources for good fats, of course, is butter and liver and milk and vegetable fats and liquid vegetable oils, things that are liquid at room temperature. There's something about eggs I'd like to tell you about. A lot of people think that you get cholesterol from eggs. Well, I know of tests being run where a person would eat 28 egg yolks a day and their cholesterol level just stay normal or be low or decrease or something like that. It does not increase the cholesterol in your bloodstream. And also 14 whole eggs a day. Well, that's way more than any of us want to eat. So eggs is not a source of any bad cholesterol for your system. You're sure welcome to eat 2 eggs a day or 3 or 4 eggs a day if you like.
Is fat good for you?
Yes, fat is one of the 3 main bodybuilding tools. Just as we talked about you needing from 20% to 25% fat in a diet for a pregnant lady, we all need that much fat. Let's look at this chart now, the main bodybuilding tool chart that we have over here. Doesn't seem like a lot, but we have, for the main bodybuilding tools, we have quality protein, about 35%, complete carbohydrate foods, about 40%, and natural fat, about 25%. All of these now, the 3 main bodybuilding tools, has to be combined with natural water, vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. So we really kind of have a set. These 3 items, with vitamins and minerals and enzymes, are the things that make it all out. 50% should be raw fruit, raw vegetables, nuts, and other good quality foods. Eating fat does not make fat. Just like eating any other kind of a food, eating beans doesn't make beans in your body, or oats doesn't make oats in your body. Eating fat doesn't make fat. Fat can be converted to sugar for energy, but eating fat alone just doesn't make fat. You need a proper balance of it just like other things.
If I wanted to lose weight, should I eat foods with fat?
Yes, you should eat foods with fat. Not a lot of fat, of course. We don't want to go to any extremes. But let's say you missed 100 calories of fat. Most people that misses calories of fat, any kind, usually make it up with maybe 5 times that in calories of carbohydrates and sugar-type foods. And that kind of a thing is what adds to your weight problem. So 20 to 25% quality fats for better digestion. It helps you empty your liver bile, and so you can digest your foods better. It gives your energy better. You're able to perform, many body functions are able to perform better because you have the right fats. And it doesn't ruin your health. There's so many diets today that cuts out on the fats, and they don't care if they ruin your health. If you get some results and lose weight, fine. But as you know, most diets, you lose weight. Next thing you know, you get tired of it, you gain weight back again, and you lose weight again, and it's a cycling process that's really bad. So don't ruin your health with diets just because they eliminate some of the fats out of your diet.
What about sugar, Jack? Good or bad?
I'm glad you asked it, but we've already covered quite a bit on sugar. Let's see if we can talk about a lot of things. Sugar in your body actually converts, sugar makes fat in your body. So you eat a lot of carbohydrates, turns into kind of sugar, makes some fat in your body. And so it's a sugar that makes the fat. Sugar is a soft drug. It's actually a habit-forming soft drug. And it's a chemical. So that's not a good thing for you. It steals the B vitamins, we've talked about that, and it's empty calories. You've heard the old idea, say, reduce your calories. Well, they're empty calories, and they're not giving you nutrition. It doesn't have a lot of good food value to it. So you really get rid of sugar because they're empty calories. All they do is help to add weight on you. And the B vitamins are destroyed by the sugar. The body thinks it's still got the B vitamins in the sugar, but it doesn't have, so it says, give me more sugar, give me more sugar, and you keep to eat more and more sugar. That's part of what the habit forming is all about. So in a way, manufacturers cheat you. They have all kinds of foods. These foods are, let's say, very poorly raised. They have very poor flavor to them. And so guess what? The manufacturer says, well, make it up with sugar. And they put a lot of sugar in it, make it all sweetened up.
Isn't sugar in just about everything?
You're absolutely right. Just seems to be today in almost everything. If you look down the store shelves, you'll find it in all kinds of soups. You'll find it in just about everything you want to look for down there, whether they be desserts or just ordinary foods, because the processors have tried to add sugar to make up for other good tastes. And not only that, but people are in the habit of eating sugar. We've already said that sugar is in things like cauliflower and broccoli, even 1.5%. Well, there's different kinds of sugar. As you know, there is a sucrose. That's the white sugar on the table. And many people are even very allergic to sucrose sugar. And they can change to a different type of sugar sometimes and get over their allergies. But that's one type of sugar, and you have all the fructose sugars, maltose, dextrose, any other kind that you want to name. So there's different kinds of sugar. I think honey is probably the best sugar because it has 4 kinds, and it lasts sometimes up to 4 hours in the digestion. In the natural kinds of sugars, there's all kinds of vitamins and minerals, and that helps to make up the balance, so we need those kind of sugars to subsist on. It gives you other nutrients along with it. Sometimes they have enzymes also in those type of natural sugars. So the old trick is, you want to give a treat to your kids, it wouldn't be sugar. Sugar to a kid is a treatment, and it's basically not good for them. Now, let's face it, the whole world, and especially here in the United States, we're into the habit of giving you a sugar treat at the end of a meal, and you're supposed to be doing something good to give your kids candy or give your kids some of these sweet things. I guess it's a total new educational process. Either have a natural sweet of some kind or gradually convert them into a real product, pieces of fruit or pieces of or certain nuts, say for instance raw nuts or something else. Get them a little bit away from the sugar habit.
Does a relationship exist between sugar and fat?
Yes, we've covered that quite a bit. And as you know, we talked about chocolate. And the only way chocolate is around is by having hardened fats in it and sugars together. And that gives it the right consistency and, of course, the right flavor. And with the sweetness that's there, it's a very popular product. In fact, it is so popular that, and it's such a habit-forming product, that we will find that there is chocolate cakes and pies, and we've got chocolate ice cream and chocolate icings and chocolate cookies and chocolate milk, and just about anything they can make chocolate, they'll make chocolate. I know of coating strawberries with chocolate, you know. So there's all kinds of ways there, and most of this chocolate is being coated is a combination of a saturated fat and a sugar. So there's one thing that there's really not very good. And we don't want to forget there's theobromine, and it's a habit-forming drug in the chocolate. And it's made it so, let's just say there was 100 different desserts for you to eat. Well, if you're really hooked on chocolate, you'll only pick the chocolate ones. And you will miss out on those other flavors, many, many other kinds of flavors. And so it is not a good idea to get hooked on chocolate. You miss out on so many other good flavored things. And, of course, the cholesterol problem with the chocolates and the combination is not there, and pimples perhaps from eating these combination of sugars and fats together.
What about artificial sweeteners, such as NutraSweet and saccharin?
I'm against all the artificial things, and especially the artificial sugars. And there's a little story I'd like to show you up here on the chart, all about these artificial things, see if it'll help to explain some of it. This chart I call avoid all, because I'd really like to avoid all artificial foods, let alone just artificial sweeteners. So now we have drinks and foods today with artificial sweeteners, such as saccharin. Well, we've had saccharin around for a long time. It's been made out of coal tar, says it may cause cancer. They even have warnings on most of the foods that have saccharin in it. Now we have a new one out. We call it NutraSweet, or Equal, or aspartame, or aspartic acid, or some of these other names. It's a little bit hard to pronounce. May cause permanent brain damage, cancer, and many illnesses. There's been quite a number of problems with some of these products. There is a lot more details in Health Freedom News, July and August 1986, Artificial Sweetener Strikes a Sour Note, on page 25. This is the article. It'd be good for everybody to read it that seems to be a bit interested in artificial sweeteners. All other fake sweeteners we shouldn't have anything to do with. All are worse than white sugar. White sugar you can handle by building up your B complex to help take care of it. But chemicals to your body you can never handle properly.
So diet soft drinks are out, right?
Yes. I wouldn't advise any diet soft drinks of any kind under any conditions, whether you're dieting or not. I don't advise them to be used.
I guess regular soft drinks are out too.
Well, regular soft drinks, if they're made out of sugar, of course would be out, because the sugar I don't recommend if they're made out of other kinds of chemicals instead of real drinks. There's a few soft drinks that have some better quality things in it. You can go to some health food stores and find a few soft drinks that's either sweetened with honey or maybe just fructose, just a little bit better than some of the other soft drinks. And of course the cola drinks, every type of cola drink, initially cola had cocaine in it. They have removed most of the cocaine, but they could never get it all out. So the cola drinks have cocaine to a tiny degree. They have caffeine in them, unless, again, the caffeine has been removed. They may have up to 1% caffeine in cola drinks, even when it says it doesn't have caffeine. That's allowed, so it means you still are getting caffeine. I'm, of course, against using all the caffeine. Some of the cola drinks are made actually from bird manure. Now, it's kind of rough to have to say that on television here, but it's made out of bird manure. They go down to some islands and pick up a lot of shiploads full of this bird manure to help process up a lot of these cola drinks that are quite famous around here. And of course, most of them still have caffeine and they have cocaine, and you want to just kind of stay away from it. Again, they have a lot of sugar, about a teaspoonful per ounce. So we're looking at an awful lot of sugar in these drinks. And there's a lot of artificial flavor, a lot of artificial color, and it's just one of those negative foods. If you would look at a spectrum of food values, you'd go all the way from about a negative 100, and you'd be right in the middle of soft drinks. And to go clear up to a positive 100 of some of the finest foods that you could possibly drink. When I was a young boy, there was a young lady that lived in our community. In fact, she was a daughter of some doctors in a town in southern Illinois. And she practically lived on some soft drinks, especially the caffeine soft drinks. Well, she didn't make it past 17. And even Mayo Clinic could hardly tell us why she died. But she died, and we're convinced that she died of that, of drinking too many of these soft drinks.
Caffeine really bad?
I think it's bad, and I just talked about this young lady that I knew since a child that did die from it. It will carry over into the third or fourth generation through the male sperm, and it can carry over and do various kinds of problems. It accumulates as a toxin in all your vital organs, and I would say that eventually drinking enough soft drinks with caffeine in it, that includes coffee and even tea, all the cola drinks that have caffeine, that it's going to build up eventually until it will kill you if something else doesn't get you first, or some other type of an accident or that sort of a thing. There's about 3 to 5 grains of caffeine in a cup of coffee. The American Medical Journal at one time published an article indicating that 3 grains of caffeine is an overdose. So here, 1 cup of regular coffee has 3 to 5 grains of caffeine. So that's kind of a problem area. And the accumulation problem is another thing. it will accumulate in your vital organs. The one good thing I've known is that people that quit drinking caffeine beverages, although they'll have withdrawal symptoms just like any other drug, after a while it will clear out of their system enough until there don't seem to be too much of a long problem area. The other bad problem is that some of our nutritional consultant people that you can read about in books in some of the health food stores have literally proven by experience, working with many, many, many patients, is that a person that drinks caffeine beverages is very difficult to ever get back into health whenever they treat them with natural vitamins and nutrition and things like that. As long as they continue to drink the coffee, it's a very difficult time to help to get them well. And when I'm talking about caffeine, we're also talking about the theobromine in chocolate and the thiene in tea. They're all alkaloids and very, very harmful to the body and accumulate in there. One other thing I'd like to say. At one time, in doing some lecturing at a large bank building for the public downtown Orlando, I'd lectured for quite some time, and the people were asking me a lot about caffeine beverages. So I did a research in my own files alone, and I recorded on tape just a 1 or 2 sentence summary of all the things that was proven by researchers all over the world, medical doctors and researchers, that was bad about caffeine. And I just read it, like doctors so-and-so and so-and-so ran a test with 483 people, and this was the results, that type of a thing. It took 25 minutes to just record the harm that was done by caffeine. And so it was quite a tape, just that out of the books that I have in my own library.
Heart trouble is one of the biggest killers today. Any hope for us?
Oh, yes. I'm sure glad you asked that question, because some of the top people in the medical field have talked about heart trouble, and finally even the top men about heart troubles and heart inflammation finally died of a heart attack. I don't really think that we get good information from the medical sources in heart trouble. Heart disease is still a nutritional problem. I'd like to turn to a chart over here, and let's just see some of the connections here. I call this a heart trouble reversal, or prevention of attacks, and even prevention of stroke. So at least it gives us a little hope right here with the name of this chart. Number 1 says the approach is almost the same as cancer. Obviously, if we're eating bad, we may get cancer. If we're eating bad, we may get any other disease, including heart trouble. If you've had an attack, you've been to the doctor, and you've done everything they say, and don't change your diet as suggested herein, even they will tell you, expect another attack sooner or later. Usually you end up having 1, 2, or 3 more attacks, and usually die. That is the standard approach to heart trouble. So I say, see the Cancer Research Suggestions page. Now, you have that back in your manual. See the standard cancer reversal program here. Number 1, reduce the stress. We're going to talk about stress right down here. Number 2, the attitude change is required, just like in the other one. Number 3, improve the quality of the diet, and you could even see your nutritional doctor for any nutritional help that you want to get, or a chiropractor in case you've had an accident or you're knocked out of your vertebrae and you're pinching the nerves and the signals aren't getting through properly. So this is a key thing, and I want to talk about here on this chart. Number 2 says increase the protein, and it's a stress story. Let's hear the story. In Europe, many doctors over there will tell you that there is 3 levels of stress, only 3 levels of stress. Everybody goes through those 3 levels of stress, and if you go through the 3rd level of stress, you die. The European doctors agree with the doctors in America. This is the only thing that I know of that they truly agree in, that there is 3 levels. The first level is a small stress. Any lights or noise or worry and so on, just any little thing that comes along may push you into the first level of stress, maybe several times in any given day. This stress calls for protein. The body supplies it from your daily food. You better hope you get enough in your daily food. The second level is a medium stress. Maybe this is big enough to be a loss of a job, a death in a family, a divorce, or a major child problem, illness, all kinds of things. Somebody broke into your house or anything. This stress calls for a large amount of protein, and daily food doesn't supply enough of that protein. So the body must borrow from Peter to pay Paul. In other words, it's going to borrow from the heart wall or other organs. It can borrow from any place, from your bones. It can borrow from your stomach, borrow from any organ to meet the demand of stress. It is very important to meet. It has to be met. The 3rd level of stress always results in death.
There is no exception. You get shot by a bullet, you get run over by a train, such amount of stress, the body cannot take care of it, and you die from a stress problem. Sounds weird, but that's what happens. There's not enough protein available to overcome that stress. Any of these bullet wounds, diseases from which you die, automobile accident, your body borrows from the vital organs, and it quits. It borrows, it tries to do it. Heart attacks are like this. It may be as much as 128 grams of protein in an hour or just a few minutes. The body says, give me all that protein, and you don't have that much. See, 128 grams of protein is the amount you get out of drinking a whole gallon of milk. Just about that amount of protein. Now, the next thing in your heart trouble, you have to use the proper fats. You don't want to use any margarine, no hydrogenated fats. Stay away from them. Stay away from every food that has it in there. Okay, the meat fats, limit that. Keep it down very low. Use natural butter and vegetable oils, and use the natural fats in very natural foods like avocados and eggs and so forth. The idea is to build your health with balanced meals. It is not to give yourself a lot of chemicals. It is not to starve yourself in some other way. You must keep up this level of stress. The prevention of stress. Keep up the level of proteins to prevent the stress problem. And you want to keep your B vitamins very high. In other words, the best natural, complete diet that you can. When we find that we have added hardened fats to our diet, as much as we find in so many foods today in the grocery stores and when we go out to eat at restaurants and that kind of a thing, we've actually done the very thing that gives us a bad diet. We've purposely added it. We cause our heart troubles. They aren't something that just imaginary came along, you were selected at random. No, we cause all of these heart troubles ourselves. We should not do it. We seem to be planning for it. We should expect it. And if we don't make any change, it's mostly a matter of time when one of these kind of problems comes along, whether it be heart trouble or many other kinds of diseases.